Good afternoon, everybody, and happy Wednesday, hump day. It's so nice to be having the opportunity to have a Stimola Live in the middle of the day and not late into the evening. And to be having my very wonderful colleague, Adriana Stimola, joining me here today to talk about her work in adult nonfiction publishing. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Erica Rand Silverman, and I am a literary agent at Stimola Literary Studio, along with Adriana, and I specialize in children's publishing. So this is a unique opportunity for me to ask Adriana all the questions that you might have too, because I have plenty of my own. And so before I bring her in, I will just remind you that if you wish to know about similar lives that are happening in the future, you can subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button below. And I will put in the chat the Stimola Live website where you can go ahead and subscribe to the newsletter. And we only send out news about events. And so you can keep up with us that way as well. Okay, so I'm going to bring in Adriana. Hi.
Hi.
Adriana, thank you so much for agreeing to come on today.
Thank you for inviting me. I was going to say taking, but that sounds awful.
Well, I mean, we can be honest. Maybe there was a little bit of forcing you to join me, but
Very happy to be here.
so normally I would, do a whole thing. Who is he? But I just want to hear from you. If you could tell us a bit about who you are and what your background is.
Yeah. So actually, before we started the live, Eric and I were talking about college, and I went to Emerson College and was saying how I don't use sort of the practical aspect of my degrees in performance and audio production that I learned there, but getting to explore there all the different classes and majors, like it really made me realize that what I've been learning about my whole life is storytelling and just different modes of storytelling, whether it was in film or books or sound or music, that it's always been some form of storytelling. But getting to publishing was sort of circuitous. My mother, Rosemary, had a children's bookstore when I was growing up. So certainly books were at the foundation of my childhood. And then later, in sort of my tweens and early teens, my dad and his cousin started a restaurant. So I had this experience really being in books and being in restaurant world, and that connection between stories and food got formulated really, really early in my life. I spent some time as an editorial assistant at Little Brown after college, and then left publishing to go be the content manager at Stone Barn Center in Terrytown, which works in partnership with Dan Barber's Blue Hill Restaurant. So I was all kinds of storytelling around farm and food and collaborations between chefs and farmers. And then realized I really wanted to come back to books because I genuinely missed them. And sort of ended up where I am now, which is doing storytelling, ushering stories into being through all of the wonderful authors I get to work with, but with a focus on nonfiction and food in particular.
So I didn't plan to ask this, but I'm curious. So has food always been a passion of yours?
Yeah, I mean, I was always really taken by special food. Like there were times of year where certain foods were special. So my family had artichokes on Christmas and artichokes on Easter. And that was like a very, very special food. And so the making of that food and the ritual of making that food was something I was very into. But it wasn't until I spent time in my family's restaurant where I really got to watch a chef who was using local farms and had no problem with like a 12-year-old being like, what's this? What's that? And really just
what a blessing.
Oh my gosh, that I thought it was really cool. Like I really did, just watching these ingredients come together. So I was, still 12, 13, young enough then that from then on, food was really important to me, but I didn't quite understand my own personal relationship with food and food storytelling until after college, I would say.
And so now you find yourself here in the agent chair. I'd love to know what made you decide to take
Yeah.
that path over another.
Yeah. Well, I really missed the books in general. And being at Stone Barns, it was such a hub where all of these farmers, chefs, academics were coming in and having these sort of cross-pollination conversations and projects, and then they were going back out into the world. And I realized I wanted to follow their stories and be a part of the stories they were telling outside of that place. And, I guess I could have gone back to the editorial side of things.
You're a very good editor.
Thank you. But there's a personal connection on the agent side and a lasting relationship on the agent side that just feels better suited to my personality, honestly. I like to go deep. So imagining being an editor and having of course there are those editors who get to work with one author for 15 years. But I love building and looking at big picture with clients. And that's something that really agents are fortunate to get to do. So that's why.
So I'm curious. You already, and we're going to talk more about this later, but you've already curated such a beautiful, impressive list of books. I'd like to hear you talk a bit about what rises to the top for you when you're getting submissions, and to like how you knew where to begin, if it was intentional or it just sort of happened that way. I remember, it's a little different because I was in children's, obviously, but when I first started out, a colleague called me and she said, "I have the perfect client for you." And I said, "Oh." And she described this writer who she did not think was fit for her list. And I said, "And so why did you think of me?" And she said, "Oh, well, you do boy humor." And I had no idea that I did boy humor. I mean, I was like, just starting out, and I looked up at my shelf, and I was like, "Oh my God, I do boy humor." It wasn't what I set out to do. Yeah. So I'm just wondering how intentional you were coming in, or if you found yourself surprised. And then in moving forward, what is emerging for you out of your submission pile?
So I think there are two answers. So when I was fresh out of Stone Barns, I was like, okay, food. I have the most present connections with people who are, either food editors or people who are home cooks or chefs that do it in a professional capacity. So the first cookbook I sold was actually for Anna Stockwell. So this book just came out. It's called For the Table. It has foil, and it's very pretty. But I knew Anna from my time on the editorial side at Little Brown, and she was an editor at Server magazine doing food. So, I start my new life as a literary agent, and here's this person who I've known for a decade, and have talked about sort of our professional lives, and have always just bonded over food, even when I wasn't working in food. So that was one that it was easy. I felt extremely grateful, and I said, you don't have to be my client. And she was like, "Why would I not be your client?" Which felt really good. And so I think it was a really comfortable and safe place for me to start with, because it was subject matter I was so confident in, given just coming out of Stone Barns. And it was with a person who knew me both as a professional and just as a human and a friend. And so starting with cookbooks felt easier. In terms of what rises now to sort of the surface when I'm looking at food and food submissions is, I think we live in a time where we're really lucky to have eaten many dishes, many different kinds of different dishes, but also so many iterations. So when I look at a collection of recipes, it's like, yes, does it sound good? Do I want to eat it? But it's also, why is it different? Or why should I be cooking this now? And that's where the individual's story and sort of hook and framework for the recipe comes in, or for the recipes comes in. But it's also where I find the through thread in the various projects I do, which is nourishment. So if I'm to go back to Anna Stockwell's cookbook, it's about gathering and cooking in a way where you're sharing platters for the table. So there's the aspect of nourishment through the food itself, but also what that act of being together does and how that nourishes us. So there's always sort of that extra layer of nourishment. Like, how does this make us feel better now? Why do we need it? I mean, it's something I ask clients to put in their proposals all the time. Why this book? Why now? And those are the answers that have to be really compelling to me to get those books to rise to the top of my submission list. And then my sort of answer to your being the boy humor person is I'd forgotten that I was a total teenage witch. I mean, I didn't forget. Anyone spent time with me, I'm like, let me do your tarot, or let me do your, like, it's such a part of who I am. But I hadn't considered it could be a part of my professional life. So Johanna Wright, who I did this creativity journal with, came to me and said, I think I want to do a deck about creative consciousness healing. I don't know if that's something you're interested in. And so it wasn't, oh, you're the deck person.
But now you're the deck person.
Asked, and I forgot. I was like, I am that person. And since starting that work with Johanna, I now have more than 6 decks forthcoming in the next 2 years, as well as other sort of interactive spiritual tools, dream journals, just different, whether it's a true tarot deck or an oracle deck. But again, there's nourishment there. It's, how do we talk to ourselves? How do we navigate living in this insane world that we live in? So what are those tools? And I think just as much as a tarot deck or an oracle deck is a tool for sort of self-betterment or getting oriented, food is too. To me, they're not that different. So yes, it feels wonderful to now be like, oh, this is the person you want to go to, Adriana, if you have a deck or an interactive journal or something witchy. And 16-year-old me cannot believe that is my job. It makes me so happy.
Do you think that there's, it's funny how how you attracted this to you. Do you think that is there something specific you think that you do or that people can do to open themselves up to attract the right people or the right projects?
Yeah, I mean, well, it is all environment building. So I mean that in terms of an actual network of people, because so for example, Naomi Brodner is a new client of mine, and she will have a dream journal coming out with Union Square in 2023. Don't quote me, or 24. But through Naomi, I entered into this sort of collective of other creative, spiritual artists. And through Naomi, Marcella Kroll, who I think is here, found her way to me as well. And now we're doing a ton of, republishing of old decks, but also new projects of hers are going to be coming. So there was this sort of surround yourself with people whose work you respect or aspire to, and that there will be ripples as a result of that. But I also think it was just my personal practice. Especially during pandemic, I started needing those kinds of tools more and was doing my morning readings or daily readings. And so I truly think I was then creating not a literal physical environment or landscape of people network, but a different kind of energetic network of this is how I want to be spending my time. And I think those things resonate in other ways as well when it comes to attraction on the personal side and on the professional side.
I feel like that kind of leads us into, and something that I bet people wonder is, in addition to people coming to you through submission, do
Mm.
you find yourself, because I know I do you find yourself finding clients other ways, right? By you being proactive?
Mhm.
And if so, what are those spaces and what are those ways?
Yeah. Um, there are definitely less in-person opportunities than there used to be, but I do take them. So, for example, I go to the Cherry Bomb Jubilee every year. Cherry Bomb is an organization that works mostly with women and food, but it's all the female food media icons, but it's also a really incredible network of the up and coming, hungry, excited, entrepreneurial, spirited food people. So I love going to that conference just to see who's in the room. And this past year, I did have occasion to say, I've heard of this person. I see this person over there. I'm going to go talk to them and do, even for an agent, the very awkward agent thing of saying, I'm doing the agent thing where I'm going to tell you that I'm a literary agent. And should you have book aspirations, I want to hear about them. And please feel free to reach out. Um, and I will do that occasionally with the help of Instagram. And I know it's like, ugh, but more than I'm looking at specific individuals on Instagram, there are people in food media and in sort of the psychology meets spirituality space that I follow because they have their finger on the pulse. So like, who are they talking about? Like, who are people excited about? It's not just that I'm looking for an account that has a ton of followers that then I'm gonna reach out to those person. It's more to help me get a cultural temperature on what's resonating with people. And then ideally I find a personal connection where I'll see, oh, hey, you wrote an article about so-and-so. Would you mind connecting me? I prefer to have the most organic connections between myself and potential clients. Occasionally, it's happened twice. I will do a cold DM with Very Gay Paint, who has a book coming out in spring 23 with Andrews McMeel called A Very Gay Book. And I said to them in my DM, I never do this. And it was true because it was the first time I'd ever done it. And what was also true that I said was I couldn't find a personal connection fast enough. I think if I had given it time, I might have been able to find somebody who knew somebody who could send an email. But I was fully obsessed with what they were doing and had to DM them right away. And I'm glad I did because
So are we. The joy that Very Gay Paint brings to the studio on the daily.
That is nourishment.
So
it's humor. I mean, it's satire. Their book is A Very Gay Book is a textbook that retells and tells the story of our culture through the lens of gay. And it is total medicine. It's the kind of medicine that makes you laugh, but it is incredibly nourishing. So when I say nourishment, no, I don't just mean like the Dutch babies from Melina Hammer's cookbook, or the spiritual nourishment we get from Marcella Kroll or Cara Elizabeth, but like, we need to laugh. That's nourishment too.
So badly. Especially lately. Yeah, I mean, how long can we say especially lately? Lately has been a very long time. So what kind of agent are you, Adriana Stimola? How would you describe yourself?
So that's harder to answer than I thought it would be. I mean, agents are many things. We wear many hats. I'm a damn good cheerleader. Not just as I'm pitching, to editors or houses, but even once we're in process and an author is writing, like, I love having my pom-poms on the sidelines and, ushering authors through. So I'm definitely an incredibly enthusiastic agent. But I would say my approach is also really personal. Especially in these times. But thanks to pandemic, I'm truly thanks, our professional selves have had to be more holistic, where we show up as all the other things that we are in our life outside of our profession. And I want to do that with my clients. And I look for clients that are comfortable doing that with me, because I want a holistic look at you as a creator. I mean, what's happening in your life shapes the art you're going to make, whether it's recipes or paintings or oracle decks. And I'm much more interested in building a deep creative relationship than starting out of the gate with what book can I sell for you tomorrow. Of course, that matters, but I have the majority of my clients I have signed even without a proposal in hand, because what I'm most captivated by is the mind of the person who's having the ideas and the many ideas that will come. And so that feels a little more personal. I like looking at the big picture. You know, what do you want to do in 5 years? What's the first book? What's the third book? You know, how do all these pieces sort of fit together? So I don't shy away, you know, for the right client, I don't shy away from, I'm not sure what I want my book to be, because oftentimes we can figure that out together.
How involved are you in the process of creating the proposals?
You know, I will say this till I'm blue in the face, but there are as many different ways to publish a book as there are authors writing them. So it is a little bit different every single time. Like truly no two experiences are the same. I'm happy to be high touch at proposal stage. You know, I typically send out an outline that has the components we should include. Why is that loud?
I know, it's so sweet.
And
so true. Truly.
Here's what needs to be in your proposal. And then depending on the author, I might explain a little more in depth. So if I say you need to have a marketing plan, I'll then write in parentheses, this is where you talk about X, Y, and Z. But then I hand it over and let the author do a bunch of writing to try and sort of fill in the outline I've created. And sometimes it's one pass after that where I look at it and do some light edits. And sometimes there are, you know, it can be really hard for authors to talk about themselves. So there are times where I'll go in and write more sales or cheerleader language if an author, you know, is struggling sort of being self-affirming in a pitch in that way. So I don't mind doing that. Yeah, so I'm pretty hands-on. I'm as hands-on as my clients need me to be. And again, it really is different. And someone who needs me to be hands-on at proposal stage might not need me to be hands-on during the editorial phase. Or someone who needs me at editorial phase might not need me for marketing support. So it really is like a pie chart, and it's a different percentage for every single client. But again, I think being able to have a more personal connection enables me to figure out where I can best serve each client. Yeah.
When I first started out, apparently I did boy humor, but then when I moved to the studio, I remember Rosemary saying to me, what do you want to do? And I was like, oh, I want to do illustrated books for children. And since then, that's kind of what I focused on. So I'm curious, you know, even though it sounds to me like you kind of came in perhaps knowing exactly where you wanted to go, but you know, today looking at what you have, which I'm going to ask you to show us, but first, before we fangirl out, I'm curious if there's things like holes on your list, if there's anything that you, now that you've sort of dove in and there's all these books coming, do you step back and think, I'm sort of missing this, I would love to work on something like this, or like what's on your wish list besides more of?
It's hard. I'm you know, having a wish list, which exists on, you know, the Stimola Literary Studio website, it's useful, but at the same time, I know I'm afraid sometimes to like make the bullet list of wish lists, because I know that I have no idea what's coming. And something outside of what I say I'm interested in might just be like a lightning strike. And I'm like, oh my God, this, how did I not know? How did I not know I wanted this?
Right.
That happens. You know, I think there's, you know, I have the humor and I have food. I don't have food humor. Like, I think there's a place, I think there's a kind of cookbook that I have not worked on yet that is nourishing in a different way than Anna Stockwell and Melina Hammer's books are, which are, you know, so tied to gathering, and Melina Hammer's books so tied to nature and our connections there. But I feel like there's some sort of light, funny, like, I don't even know how to describe it because I haven't seen it. But there's a kind of cookbook that I don't know what it is yet that I want to work on.
Yeah, I love that.
Um,
Did you come up with that right now?
yeah, I did.
Yeah, I love it. What else is in there? Dig deep.
More visual, more design stuff. I mean, Very Gay Paint was a total outlier for me in pursuing them initially just as muralists and artists, and then it turned out they are brilliant effing comedians. And that book turned into something I never could have expected, which is also a total gift when that happens. But yeah, I love aesthetics in general. So like, what's a design book that sort of fits the nourishment category for me? I don't know. But I think more humor, more design. I mean, the spiritual stuff isn't going to stop coming, and I'm just going to keep doing those things. Everything else, like more food, more interactive spiritual tools. But I think there's a new kind of cookbook that I haven't put my finger on yet. And I think there's a world of design that I haven't been able, or just haven't had the opportunity to work in yet, that I want to.
Let's see what you do have on your desk.
Yeah. Okay.
Show us what you're working on and what your clients are working on.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna show Kyle Sheely's book. This came out in February. Kyle, sort of similar to Very Gay Paint, but also these are totally different projects, was a book that didn't fit in a box. What's wonderful about Kyle is Kyle wrote a children's book called A Pizza with Everything on It, which you, Erica, represented. And when he had this adult idea, Erica was like, I don't know, go talk to Adriana.
But what a joy to have the confidence to be like, I have the perfect person with you, perfect person for you. And wow, you guys really crushed it. You really worked together so well.
He crushed it. So like even when he sent me the idea, I was like, I don't know what this is. Mm-hmm. So I mean, Kyle is an artist and a motivational speaker and a follow-througher of crazy ideas. Like, that's who he is. And so this book, How to Host a Viking Funeral, is part memoir, sort of tells the story of his building of this Viking ship. But this Viking ship was essentially a public art project. So it's very much about public art and sort of this collective experience of sharing regrets. So it's part memoir, part discussion about public art, but then it really goes into self-help, because in looking at all of these regrets, Kyle realizes that there are categories and sort of ways in which we as humans from all over the world are experiencing regret. So it's all of those things. And so even as I was pitching it, I was like, yes, it is this and this and this. It didn't fit in a box. And that's a great example of sort of what I was talking about before, where that doesn't necessarily scare me if the content is good enough. And if I'm like, no, like I can't stop thinking about it. And that's where the personal connection comes in. And that's where fangirling comes in, because I really, I insist on being a genuine fangirl for every single client I represent. I mean, number one, it makes me way better at pitching and just way better at my job. And in the end, that's what it is. Like, if you hooked me as a human being, the chances of me hooking another human being who happens to be an editor is going to be higher. So this is, I keep wanting to curse. This is fucking awesome. And totally nourishing, and was a total surprise and unlike anything I've ever worked on. So that's Kyle. We talked about Anna Stockwell a little bit. So For the Table from Abrams, all about gathering. And Anna really gives incredible tips, like makes entertaining not feel like entertaining. Like, it's totally accessible. It's totally possible. It's fun. It's light. It doesn't have to be super precious. You don't have to be Martha Stewart. Melina Hammer's Catbird Cottage came out in May, and Melina is so connected to her Hudson Valley surroundings. So there's a big section about foraging in here.
Hold on, I meant to be good. I wanted to show you. I want to show because it's hard to see the book in the small. Yeah, I want people to see it. There you go.
Huge section on foraging in here. But again, like with Anna's, it's not just aspirational. It's not like host a big dinner party or like, make pickled ramps or spruce tip sugar. Like, those things are in here, but it just makes it feel possible. She presents it in such a way where it's just here are ways that you change your daily routine in interacting with the natural world in little ways, in small observant ways. And as a result, this food emerges. And Melina also shot the entire book herself. So it's all her photography, which of course beautiful. I'm putting, and it's only text. Look at that. What are the
There you go. Wait, hold on. Hold it up. There you go.
So it's really just luxurious, everything about it. Also in food world, Yasmin Farr has boards and spreads coming out in August. So a really fun sort of taking the format of serving things, on a board or as a spread, and how you can sort of employ that in all different kinds of meals, sort of any time of day.
I'm getting hungry. I know we said it was like a chat and chew, but then it occurred to both Adriana and I that we can't like sit here, talk and eat, because that'd be really awkward. None of you want to see us eating.
And this one actually came out some time ago, but I'm showing it because Lisa Marciano is a co-host of This Jungian Life. But since we've published this book, she now has 2 more books coming out with the same publisher, Sounds True. One in 2023 called The Return, which is really about women reclaiming aspects of themselves that they may have let fall away as they moved through life, whether we're talking about career or being a parent or just for any number of reasons that we sort of can lose ourselves. The Return is about coming back. And Lisa totally sparked a renewed deep interest in Jungian psychology in me. I mean, I grew up on Joseph Campbell and The Power of Myth. I read Women Who Run with the Wolves in college, but sort of taking fairy tales and folklore and looking at them through a Jungian lens as a way to integrate various aspects of ourselves and just help us move along as we grow and evolve, because certainly we don't stay the same, and definitely the world around us doesn't either. But Lisa and her co-host will also have an in-depth dream book come out with Sounds True in 2024. Those are all the things on my desk. Oh, and I briefly showed Marcella's secret.
Yeah, open it up.
Yeah. So this is an older version, but this will come out in fall 2024 with Union Square. And I love this deck. I use it every day. Even my kids are like, "Mommy, symbols." It's just such an easy face value way into taking suggestions from the universe of what you should be paying attention to. And I'm so excited to see it be sort of brought to the public in this bigger way, thanks to Union Square. So lots of decks on the horizon, and I wish I had more physical copies.
I know, because they're all so unique.
Yeah,
And all so beautiful.
Animal Apothecary comes out in September. Cara Elizabeth is both the artist and the manuscript writer there, and it taps into animal wisdom, but sort of cross culture and cross religion. And she does such a phenomenal job of really tapping into the positive aspects. I mean, it's a total affirmation deck, like raucous affirmation, really about tapping into power and potential and inner strength. So, while people say, in tarot, it's like, I don't want the death card or the hangman card, like, even though those are positive cards, and that's for another conversation.
Ooh, let's have that conversation.
There's nothing scary in Kara's deck. It's all positive affirmation, and getting to that place where you are like, I am powerful, I am brave, and here are all the different animals that can sort of help me tap into that aspect. Oh, look, Rose in the chat telling me hi, Ro. Lee Kalpakis is amazing, and she has a cookbook coming out in 2023 with Weldon Owen, tentatively titled Out There, a camper cookbook. So Lee, please follow her on Instagram. Lee has lived in a camper with her boyfriend for a period of time, and has a ton of experience as a recipe developer and food stylist, but basically found a way to take what you have in a camper, like to outfit it with just the right tools without taking up too much space, how to make the most of an outdoor cooking space, an outdoor fire pit, and make amazing food. Like, you're not sacrificing anything here. Like, what do I need to use for the most flavor? How can I do it in this environment? And Lee is seriously, I think, the only person in the world who could have written this cookbook. And that'll be spring, summer 2023. And I'm so excited for her. But again, nourishment and also connection to nature. That one's sort of both too. And yeah, Lee. So, I was talking about the cookbook I haven't done yet. I feel like Lee is like a bridge to whatever that next cookbook is, because she's hilarious. And is one of those humans who can drive a forklift and wield a chainsaw and then make the most amazing bouillabaisse on an outdoor
fire. Dreamy.
It's
all that fresh air.
It's all that fresh air.
Mm-hmm.
But that fangirling, like, and if I missed you, I'm sorry. Like, I will do that for all of you. Gabby Melian, who has a cookbook coming out with America's Test Kitchen Kids. I think so. That's unique in that it is on the kids side of things for me. But it's Gabby's Latin American kitchen, and it's, food from all over Latin America that she has personal connection to. So, the friends that taught her how to make the pupusas, but also, working with her grandmother on learning how to crimp the edges of her famous empanadas, and also very funny. I mean, Gabby brings such a lively spirit to all the things that she does, but I think it's so especially right for this sort of learning how to cook age in the kitchen, because she makes it super, super fun. And also, brings knowledge about ingredients and brings Spanish. I mean, there's, she uses Spanish language sort of throughout when she, uses phrases and expressions, and the same way that sort of cultural cuisine can become colloquial. Gabby's also bringing that, not just with food, but with language. And it's so fun. So fun.
We don't have much time left, so I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions.
Okay,
you ready? What's a book or two books on your shelf that is outside of what you do that you absolutely love? Nothing having to do with work.
Okay, so I read and reread Rachel Carson a lot. So she wrote Silent Spring, which is what everybody knows her for. But she has other books that are mostly about the ocean. One is called At the Edge of the Sea, and the other is Under the Sea Wing. And she's just totally magical to me. I mean, she writes about the ocean but it's like a love letter to a lover. Like I've never heard anybody scientifically talk about tide pools in this way that just like makes me feel so many feelings. So, you know, I don't work in the science sphere. I think the closest I've come, and it's not science, but Maria Rodale has a book coming out with Chelsea Green called Love, Nature, Magic, and it's about journeying in nature in the spiritual sense. So while she comes in contact with the natural world in some bit of a scientific way, it's not a science book. It's going to be really good and really fun, and I can't wait for everyone to read it. But that's the closest I've gotten to like science. But Rachel Carson, I mean, I think what's so magical about it is it puts us in relation to something way bigger than us, which a lot of my books do in other ways. Like it's definitely something books I want to work on do that, put us in relation to something way bigger than ourselves. But I think there is a place on the science side. Like who's the next Rachel Carson? I don't know. Like how are we talking about science in a way that is like deeply emotive? Like I want to do that.
You are doing it. Favorite podcast of the moment?
Oh, I'm not listening a lot. I mean, I check in with This Jungian Life because of Lisa and her friends, and it's so good. And I'm always learning, but that also is kind of like therapy at the same time when I listen to that podcast. But I just don't. I put on music when I'm working.
Favorite restaurants to eat at?
Okay, my boring former Brooklynite answer is Roman's. I miss that restaurant. I mean, it's comfort food. It's, you know, has Italian roots, as do I. So, you know, they'll have brajiols as a special, and like so few restaurants do that. So when it happens, I'm like, oh my God, Roman's brajiols. Mm-hmm. So that's my boring Brooklyn answer.
Oh, you got muted. Unmute. Can't unmute your guest. Their mic isn't connected.
What?
Oh, there you are. You're back.
Sorry.
That's okay. The universe was saying it's only Romans, or the only one. That's the only one you should talk about.
That are doing like conservas or tinned fish, or the more sort of tapas approach. Like I feel like there was a joke for years about like small plates, but I do love small plates. There's a new place in Brooklyn called Laser Wolf. Now I'm being all Brooklyn focused. I'm sorry. But it's Israeli, and it's, you know, skewers and spreads, and like I love a spread. Like it's right now it's that communal eating, which we didn't get to do for so long. Like it's the restaurants where I can go and order tons of little things that a bunch of people can share. By that same token, I did go to Gage and Tollner recently, which is like more classic steakhouse, but like old school. Still found a way to share all my food. But yeah, I mean, there are just so many. There's so many restaurants, and they're all so good.
We'll take we'll take a list when you have time to make one. What's one thing you cooked for dinner for your family this week or last week?
Okay. So it's just chicken Milanese. Like I pound out a chicken breast, I batter and fry it. I serve it on a mixed green salad, but like just as many herbs as there are mixed greens, which this time of year it's the best because I can do it from my garden. So mint, tarragon, basil, fresh oregano, thyme, like 2 cups worth of herbs, and like a cup and a half of salad greens, with the chicken on top, chives, and some sort of lemony or sherry vinaigrette. But my kids just call it big chicken. When I pound the cutlets out, they get really big, and so they call it big chicken. And while they will nibble on salad, they have bowls of ketchup that they dip their
I love the honest additions. I'm imagining your kids eating.
I'm like, there's tarragon, and they're like, ketchup. Yeah. I'm like, but I made a salsa verde, and they're like, ketchup. But that is like ultimate comfort food for me, so I make it a lot.
In our last minute, can you tell us just any advice you have for aspiring writers moving into the adult nonfiction space, or I know we have an illustrator or two with us right now who are interested in food.
Okay. So the platform word gets really scary when we talk about publishing. But I'm trying to like reclaim platform as like an empowerment tool for authors. So you do want to build platform, but don't think about it as a means to an end when it comes to getting a publisher. It's finding your reader, or your just your audience. If it's art, if it's writing, it's like, who are the people who you resonate with? And you're going to want to find that out no matter what you publish or how you publish it. So while Instagram is a huge pain in the ass, and hopefully there will be more and better tools to allow us to do this, share socially with social media, whether it's Substack or Instagram or whatever it is that you're finding and trying to do, because it's going to teach you more about the book you want to write. And it will help when the publisher asks all the platform questions that bother us, but it is useful. So, shifting perspective on platform to use it as a tool to hone your voice, to hone the project you want to write, and to find out more about your reader or your audience and what they want and how you resonate with them. And the second part of that is not to try and write somebody else's book, or make somebody else's art, which can be really hard when you see other people succeeding or people hitting on trends. But I think finding an audience you resonate with is also going to be part of holding you accountable to authenticity. If there are stories you are afraid to tell, or if there's art that like feels like tender to make, I'm inclined to say that those are the stories and art you should be producing, even if it's not for public consumption yet, but it's going to teach you a lot about what makes your book and not somebody else's. That's my advice.
One last question. This is the last one. I don't write adult nonfiction, but will you be my agent? Will you?
Of course. I love your brain. I love how it works. So yeah.
Score. All right. Adriana, this was so wonderful, and I could keep you here, but I know how busy you are, and I know how busy everybody else is who's listening to us, and so I want to be respectful of time. I will just note to you, I'm sure you saw that there were so many wonderful compliments in the chat, and it's a true testament to what a wonderful woman and agent you are. And you are a wonderful colleague as well. So thank you for spending your time with me.
I can only do what I do because of the support from my team. It makes a huge difference. So thank you, Erica.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you found this video and time together to be nourishing and helpful in any way, I'd like to ask that you like it by clicking that thumbs up at the bottom of the screen, because the more people who like it, the more people will see it, and the more people will be able to benefit from it. So please go ahead and do that. And again, if you'd like to know more about events that are coming up, you can subscribe to the channel, or you can find us on stimolalive.com, which I'm putting in the chat. And I'm going to ask Adriana to stay for a minute, but everybody else, thank you so much for joining us. And we have another event coming up on June 22nd, the evening of June 22nd, about the making of a picture book with Dorothea Rohner, who is the author illustrator of this wonderful picture book about twins. And Adriana, you have twins yourself, with her agent and her editor, and they will take you through the entire process. So if you have any interest, and I think one person said that they did in the chat, of making a picture book yourself, then this is for you, and you should come back to us on June 22nd. Or if you know somebody, you can let them know, because it'll be full of information. So have a wonderful rest of your week, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Bye.